Our next guest is commercial director Anthony Scott Burns. Anthony's Canadian and also looks like Matt Damon's little brother. Today, Anthony is going to pitch us how he would remake Rosemary's Baby in high school.
The first thing I'm going to pitch is something that could never be made in the next probably 5 years, which is a remake of Rosemary's Baby. When I watched a documentary called Jesus Camp, you realize that there are some sects of Christianity who believe that the only way Jesus will come back and show himself to us is if Satan comes back. Rosemary's Baby, for me, is a story about fear of the unknown. And I think that that's why it's such a strong story and why people responded to it. In the end of the movie, you see, in the original, you see that the baby's a demon. But is it a demon in her eyes because she fears it? At the end of the film, I didn't know if Roman Polanski meant that this is in fact a flesh and blood demon, or this is how she sees it through her eyes now because it's been tainted through this kind of process and she feared it and went down all these roads and just made it a bad experience. I think it's having kids is scary for people, and that's why people love that story. Anybody who's expecting a kid is like, you don't know what it's gonna be. I think my dad actually said to me, I was scared of you because I didn't know if you'd be like an idiot or not, or I'd want to hang out with you. And that's kind of like crazy. But my dad's very much like me, very honest and to the point. It's a valid fear. Is my son gonna be an idiot? For me to remake a classic and actually have it be something worthwhile is to make it for this generation. The huge preoccupation right now, and rightfully so, is teenage pregnancy. And so for me, Rosemary's Baby in high school, where you take a girl who moves into a new town, kind of shy, doesn't really know anybody, kind of gets picked on. She's the new girl. It's a kind of small Christian town that they move to. One night at a party, maybe she's been drugged or something, maybe someone's picking on her. She blacks out. In a couple weeks, she starts to get morning sickness. And we're like, oh my God, this girl's pregnant, teenage pregnancy. Oh my God, small Christian town. If it wasn't bad enough for her already, it's gonna be even worse. What makes her even more paranoid is that when people get wind of it, they're nicer to her. And they start to be supportive of this pregnancy. The town starts to rally in ways to be kinder to her. Basically just take this movie, modularly rework it for how scary it actually is for that age group. I think it's actually more scary to be pregnant in that age group than, as an adult. Putting it in high school actually makes it more effective. In my films, typically you don't really know what era it is. I would try to use the least amount of modern kind of interaction with technology I could get away with before it was false and phony. The bullying and cyberbullying and all that stuff that kind of works its way into high school, I think at the core, the dynamics stay the same. You would show that this girl is getting bullied, online. They find out she's pregnant. That can even be the way that it's released. She's like slut shaming and all this stuff that we're talking about is happening. The fear that goes on in high school now that someone's gonna come in there one day with a gun. Those are things that you can deal with within, a horror film. I would definitely work in the social media. I don't know much about it now because I'm friggin' old. So what you do is you go to high school and you watch. If I'm gonna do a movie about high school, I wanna see what it's like now. I'm not gonna make it how high school was for me, which is often what happens in movies now, is movies are emulations of the movies that we grew up with in a way that is untrue to people now. Because I like to point out things like, if you watch a Spielberg movie, everyone in his movies is wearing the height of fashion that very day. They're not wearing retro clothes in his movies. They're wearing the height of fashion of that day, whereas if someone makes a Spielbergian movie now, they put them in 80s clothes. I would represent the religious aspects of the town, very subtly because I wouldn't want to step on anybody's toes, but really through the actions, which, a Christian town, really, that just comes down to people being, trying to be as nice as possible to each other and going to church. Obviously, it gets a little, frightening when there are rules that we must follow, that God has told us to follow, and that's where people get a little, testy. The simple fact that people would be supporting a teenage pregnancy the way they are would set you off in the way that the original did, where you didn't think all these old people are, Satan worshipers. You just thought, they're acting really weird. And I think that simple action of a pariah of the town getting pregnant, we don't know who the father is, we have ideas. Captain of the football team is all really nice to her. Well, is he the father? Is he the one that did it? She was drugged and she's sitting and she's getting raped by her own husband. We'll see faces, kind of blur in and out and things like that. Have that religious aspect be very subtle and off-putting. Rosemary will have a best friend, somebody who she can, confide in, but being a horror film, you're on guard, so you're gonna think, is the friend in on it? Like the whole time, so it'll be this kind of push-pull where you're toying with everyone's perceptions, much like the husband figure in the original, where you're going, is he in on it? Does he know that he made a deal with the devil, et cetera, et cetera? Even some of the people in the town might not be in on it. They're just people living in this town. When you get to a very religious town, not everyone's the same religion, but there are these core individuals, especially in a small town, who seem to run the joint. The mayor and the sheriff and everything. I've always been obsessed with is the idea that if you went out into the middle of kind of nowhere in pretty much any country, those towns have the ability to be autonomous in a way. Rosemary's parents in this remake would be probably down on their luck. They maybe lost their jobs in another town and had to move there for financial reasons. And I think that's another mirror of the original, and it kind of greatly just weaves itself in, is that all of a sudden they start doing quite well, whether it's a car business, like a used automotive business or whatever we decide to do for the parents. Really, you're gonna see this progression of, we can't afford a Nintendo, now we've got Nintendo. That was my childhood, when you knew someone was doing okay because they had a Nintendo. Nowadays, people will buy an Xbox and not buy food. But back in the day, you would not do that. Rosemary's parents, they're the conduit that we see that there's been a deal made within the town. And whether or not they know that their daughter is the delivery mechanism, we'll never know, but we know that they're being taken care of by the town because of what they're sacrificing. Ideally, to cast something like a modern telling of Rosemary, Mia Wasikowska, a couple years ago, that would have been perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, I would probably just go on the road and just look. You spend 80% of the movie with that one person. Their face is on screen for the most part. Find a new one, a new star. I would make the film look as normal and unassuming as possible. Take place in a town that doesn't look gothic. It's just your regular, average town. Natural light. I shoot most of my stuff natural light. I just love how it looks, and it really sets up the audience for not knowing what they're in for. Everyone knows what Rosemary's Baby is. So if you call that movie Rosemary's Baby, everyone knows they're in for a horror film. You want to have people on the edge of their seat by not knowing when you're gonna pull crazy shit on them. And I think that making it as simple and normal as possible. Look at Jaws. It's just a normal looking movie, but there's a fucking shark in it.
What if Tarantino made a Batman movie? They don't just exist in some writer's head. They're a little too out there. If you'd like me to keep making more, please share this with all your friends. I hope you enjoy them.